A very warm good evening to you wherever you're watching us from across Kenya and the world. You are watching Global Watch. Remember, this is the program where we bring you the latest news that happened across the globe. Thank you for joining me. My name is Eddy Nyadwa and you're watching Global Watch. And we begin straight from the Queensland, that is the United Kingdom, where Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have selected the carriage and horses they will use for their wedding procession. They will tie the knot on Saturday, 19th of May, that is later this month. The wedding will take place at St. George Chapel in Windsor.
This was used in the royal wedding in 2011. It was used to take the pages and the bridesmaids from Westminster to Buckingham Palace.
Obviously, it's years of training. We expose them to lots of things the whole time. Just the roads here are sirens and lorries and clapping people, and wherever you go. Good boy.
And now we go to Japan, where Japanese engineers have created a real-life transformer that can change between a sports car and a giant humanoid robot. Its developers claim that it's the first robot that can transform into a car while safely carrying at least 2 passengers. Although it's still a prototype, it has awakened the inner child in many. That's some great tech news. Imagining your car turning into a great humanoid. Wow. For some time that was only possible in movies, in the Transformers. Now it's imminent, just a matter of time. And now we move straight in Japan, in Spain, where a man was seriously injured on Saturday at a bull running festival in Valencia, in Spain. A video filmed in the town of Ontinyent showed the bull running down a man dressed in a red shirt and tossing him into the air. At this fiesta, the bull's horns are wrapped in fabric so that they can't puncture flesh. However, the man was immediately rushed to hospital where he was said to be in a critical condition. Now to Hawaii is that Mount Kilauea volcano erupted near a residential area on Hawaii's largest island, prompting a local state of emergency and a mandatory evacuation of at least 1,700 residents.
Excuse me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we're out of here. Thank you.
Facebook's chief executive Mark Zuckerberg kicked off the company's annual developers conference by acknowledging that 2018 has been an intense year just 4 months in. Speaking in San Jose in California at Facebook's F8 gathering of tech folks, startups and others, Zuckerberg said to Cheers that the company is opening app reviews, the process that gets new and updated apps on its services. He also reiterated that Facebook is investing a lot in security and strengthening its systems so that they can't be exploited or meddled with during elections.
Hey everyone! Hey! Welcome to F8! This has been an intense year. I can't believe we're only 4 months in. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to say how much it means to us that you're all here with us today. Now, I know that it hasn't been easy being a developer these last couple of months, and that's probably an understatement. But what I can assure you is that we're hard at work making sure that people don't misuse this platform so you can all keep building things that people love. But we're all here because we are optimistic about the future. We have real challenges to address, but we have to keep that sense of optimism too. You know, what I've learned this year is that we need to take a broader view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just build powerful tools. We need to make sure that they're used for good, and we will. In 2016, we were slow to identify Russian interference. We expected more traditional cyber attacks like phishing and malware and hacking, and we identified those and notified the right people, but we didn't expect these coordinated information operations and large networks of fake accounts that we're now aware of. So I sat down with our teams after this, and we said, we will never be unprepared for this again. And since then, there have been important elections like the French presidential election, the German elections, the Alabama Senate special election last year, and we've been more prepared. We deployed new AI tools that successfully identified and took down tens of thousands of fake accounts before they could do anything. We've traced the fake account network back to Russia and taken down their network. Part was figuring out a way to move forward on everything else. I also want to talk about data privacy. You know, what happened with Cambridge Analytica was a major breach of trust. You know, an app developer took data that people had shared with them and sold it. So we need to make sure that this never happens again. So we're taking a number of steps here. First, as you all know, we're restricting the data that developers will be able to request from people. Now, the good news here is that back in 2014, we already made a major change to how the platform works to prevent people from sharing a lot of their friends' information. So this specific situation could not happen again today. They're ideological. You know, they just want to make money. You know, hawking. We're going to keep investing heavily in security and privacy. But security isn't a problem that you ever fully solve. Right, this is an arms race. And we're going to be working to stay ahead of our adversaries forever. So while we're doing this, we also have a responsibility to keep building services that bring people together in new ways. Start off having this information stored with your account going forward. So you're going to be able to use this tool to see the information about the apps and websites you've interacted with. You'll be able to clear all this information from your account, and you'll even be able to turn it off, having this information stored with your account going forward. Now, to be clear, when you clear your cookies in a browser, it can make parts of your experience worse. Or you may have to sign back into dozens of websites. You may have to reconfigure some things. And the same is going to be true here. Or your Facebook won't be quite as good while it relearns your preferences. But after going through our systems, this is the kind of control that we think that people should have. It isn't a problem that you ever fully solve. So overall,
U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis met with Macedonia Defense Minister Radmil Sekerinca at the Pentagon. During the meet, Mattis applauded Macedonia's boldness in expelling a Russian diplomat after the Salisbury chemical weapon attack. On her part, The Macedonia Defense Minister reiterated that her country will continue to engage in important defense reforms, strongly supported by the US and NATO. The two leaders also discussed about the war in Afghanistan, the involvement of NATO, among other security issues.
It's a pleasure to host you after our last meeting at NATO's defense minister. I believe it was in February that we last spoke together. As a NATO partner, Macedonia has taken strong steps to meet these challenges itself, sending troops to assist NATO's Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan, thank you, and contributing to the Defeat ISIS coalition, again, thank you. And you're doing this as a partner nation, placing yourself firmly on the path to spend the 2% of GDP on defense. So it's, again, your example is heartening. And I must applaud Macedonia's resistance to Russia's malign influence in the Balkans, and I welcome your continued leadership by example in this region. And by expelling a Russian diplomat after the Salisbury chemical weapons attack, that shows too how Macedonia stands firmly on the side of civilized nations and for international law.
Since our independence, we have placed NATO membership as our key strategic priority, and we have secured and maintained a very strong consensus within our society for this. We have engaged in important defense reforms, supported strongly by the US, and we have increased our contributions to the NATO-led mission in Afghanistan. We have proven to be a dedicated and reliable partner, and we aim to be also such an ally as member of the alliance.
10 of our colleagues were killed in Afghanistan yesterday. The message from this building has consistently been that the situation is turning around, that things are improving there. How do you reconcile this difference?
First, I don't know that that's been the message from this building. I would not subscribe to that. We said last August NATO is going to hold the line. We knew there would be tough fighting going forward. The murder of journalists and other innocent people is a great testimony to what it is we stand for, more importantly, what we stand against. The Afghan military is being made more capable. You'll notice that more of the forces are special forces, advised and assisted, accompanied by NATO mentors, and these are the most effective forces. So the expansion there is why the enemy has been unable to take any district centers, provincial centers, or make any advances there. Unfortunately, once in a while they get through, because any terrorist organization that realizes it can't win by ballots and turns to bombs, this is simply what they do. They murder innocent people. We'll stand by the Afghan people, we'll stand by the Afghan government, and the NATO mission will continue as we drive.
President Donald Trump, picked to lead the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has taken himself out of the running less than 6 months after he was nominated. Thomas Homan announced that he will retire this summer to focus more on family. Asked about the ICE, Homan said it needs to get better leadership and that his leadership needs to get better and educate the public about what the ICE does. He largely blamed the media for misinformation. Thomas Homan, who was acting director since Trump took office, spearheaded a 40% surge in deportation arrest and establishing stringent immigration policies.
I need to get better, my leadership needs to get better at educating the public on what we do, and most importantly, what we don't do. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I read the press clips every morning, and my public affairs officer hears from me every morning, this story's inaccurate, fix this, fix that. I got to take part of the blame for that. Maybe I need to be out there more talking. I'm a busy person. I'm only one person, so I'm counting on my senior leadership to get out there and tell people what we do and what we don't do, so the communities know exactly what ICE is about. this misconception and these words that some of the media uses, maybe intentional, maybe not intentional, that's what stokes fear in the community. If the community realized that 9 out of 10 people we arrest had a criminal history, they'd probably be less afraid. If the community knows that they can go to the hospital, we're not going to arrest them there. They can go to church, we're not going to arrest them there. They can send their kids to school, we're not going to arrest the kids. There's less fear in the community. So the fear in the community is based on the misconception of what ICE does. That's where I get frustrated with what I read in the paper. And what I read in the paper that ICE and myself are racists and Nazis. It's unfair to attack the men and women of ICE who choose to strap a gun to the hip every day to do their job and protect this nation and protect their community. It's unfair to vilify them for doing their jobs. If you don't like what they do, tell your senator, tell your congressman, tell them to change the law. We're simply enforcing laws enacted by Congress and can't apologize for doing it. So don't vilify the men. No one asked the DEA not to do their job or FBI not to do their job. It's unfair to ask, ICE not to do their job. So that's the story I'd like to see get out there. And as far as being racist and Nazis, actually ICE arrests thousands of human rights violators and removes them from this country that are wanted in other countries for serious human rights violations, war crimes. We have arrested and removed Nazi criminals. So it's quite the opposite of what some of these groups want to say about us. So that's what frustrates me in the media, and that's the story I'm trying to, let's get the facts out there and talk facts.
And still on matters immigrants is that a caravan of Central Americans seeking asylum in the United States sought the world's attention as scores of migrants traveled through Mexico on a journey to escape their violent homelands. The caravan first drew the attention of the world when the US President Donald Trump promised that his administration will seek to turn away the families. A few have been allowed in the US, with the rest of the asylum seeking process happening slowly and secretly in immigration courts. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency has limited beds in family detention centers and may also choose to release adults and their children while their cases wind through the system, often with orders that some of them wear ankle monitors.
About 1,000 migrants at the peak crossed Mexico in a caravan. It started March 25th in the city of Tapachula near the Guatemalan border, and they started arriving in large numbers last week in Tijuana. About 200 were ready to claim asylum on Sunday, but they were blocked because the U.S. authorities said there was no room to accommodate them at this border crossing here in San Diego. Last night about the first 8 were allowed in, and this morning organizers are saying that another 6 were allowed in. So that leaves about 140 or 150 that are still waiting in Tijuana. Many of them are camped out in a large patio that leads into the border crossing. The Mexican authorities have erected gates so that they don't impede the flow of people going to work, school, and for visits. The people seeking asylum are almost entirely from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, fleeing violence. I talked to at least a dozen of them, and there were horrible stories about how they were being threatened, their lives were being threatened. To qualify, they have to meet a very limited criteria, a narrow set of criteria, which include political affiliation, religion, nationality, a couple other things. And I will say the Central Americans have had a very low success rate at eventually winning asylum. It could take several years. The courts are backlogged with nearly 700,000 cases, so it could take 3 years or more for these asylum cases to be resolved. It's unlikely they would be detained that long, but they have a long road ahead.
And now to some African continent news is that Uganda is conducting a census to establish the population of the critically endangered mountain gorillas. This comes amid confidence that their numbers are steadily on the rise, boosting the prospect of local tourism industry that is heavily reliant on the primates. The vast national parks makes keeping tabs on these critically endangered species difficult. There are hundreds of square kilometers of vegetation where the gorillas can hide, but a team from the Ugandan Wildlife Authority is heading out into the forest to take a census of the population. These rangers rely more on scientific measures though. They have found a recent gorilla trail and followed it to its nest. Here, they spot what they've been looking for, that is the gorilla dung. They collect it and later use it to conduct DNA tests.
For example, this is just the eye. And help us to know the accurate numbers of the gorillas. Once we test the DNA, it will help to get the actual numbers and to avoid the repetition of overcounting. We carry research from the where gorilla sleeps because it is hard for the gorillas to count them per head. Those animals, they are wild animals. We have got the wild and habituated ones. They are all in the forest, and our mission is to account all the gorillas in the forest, those habituated ones and non-habituated ones.
Previously, there was a lot of pressure on gorillas. They were being killed. Others, the habitat disturbance was quite high. Like people were going in the forest, collecting forest produce, hunting, and so on. So those were having a very great impact on the gorillas. So now that we believe that they have gone down, so that we are seeing improvements in both the numbers and the distribution.
The fact that they are critically endangered, we need to regularly keep taking stock of them and knowing how many they are, and that gives us an opportunity to come up with practical action plans for improved conservation of these mountain gorillas. So it is actually an activity that we conduct every 5 years. The beauty is that for the last censuses that we've done, the numbers of mountain gorillas has been increasing. So it is also a hope that this time round, when we come back from the field and have the results, we hope that we shall find the population of mountain gorillas having gone up.
Tunisia is aiming to produce its own cancer drug by the year 2020. A private pharmaceutical group has set up a high-tech production unit that will manufacture chemotherapy treatment for Tunisian patients and also for patients in the region.
I am very proud of this achievement. Neopolis Pharma is a subsidiary of the Medis Group. It's the largest producer of chemotherapy drugs in Africa and the Middle East. Tunisia is working to meet 60% of the market needs for medicines in 2020. We were at 51% in 2016. The government intends to expand drug production units, which will increase the sector turnover to $545 million in 2 years.
The unit will help Tunisia become self-sufficient in the production of anti-cancer drugs. All African and Middle East countries will benefit from this project. Doctors and patients will have access to drugs at any given time.
In Zimbabwe is that the Zimbabwe Energy Minister has announced that it's constructing a green building which will generate its own electricity and recycled water. The ministry hopes that the model will be adopted for new buildings to help cut demand for grid electricity.
All the water from the site and from the building, runoff water, is captured into an underground reservoir and then used in the building. Equally, the wastewater from the building, in other words, from the toilets in the building, is captured in a biogas set up again on the ground floor, and the energy that is set up, biogas that's set up, can be used for cooking and if need be for lighting in the building. Just the idea of solar water heating will knock out of your bill something like 40% of your bill. Instead of incurring that expense on a monthly basis, you would basically be having your bill, your electricity bill. Anybody who's done the sums, it's an attractive proposition. Those that already have electric geysers, a 5-year period in which to adjust. But those that are building new buildings, new houses, we shall insist that instead of fitting in an electric geyser, which takes so much electricity, that they fit in a solar water geyser.
And now in Tanzania is that China has embarked on a pilot project to combat malaria. With the project, China hopes to reduce the disease burden on the country. Already Tanzania has made strides in the fight against malaria. By last year, it had managed to reduce malaria prevalence from 33% in 2005 to only 9% in 2015. The current project is being rolled out in the refugee area with plans to spread it to other districts. China hopes that this intervention will supplement efforts by various organizations to fight and ultimately eradicate malaria by the year 2030.
So Ifakara Health Institute has partnered with the NIPD, the National Institute of Parasitic Diseases in China, to undertake this pilot project to demonstrate that it is possible to do some malaria elimination in places like Rufiji. So why Rufiji? It was wise to use Rufiji as a testing platform for this strategy to try and see whether we can eliminate malaria.
We are here to do this first project running in the Africa country, and because Chinese had some experience working in the community level to do the disease control program, particularly on malaria. And malaria in China, that was also the serious problem in history. After 1980s, the incidence rate really decreased, and up to now we are still we are already entering into the malaria elimination stage, and our optimal goal is going to be eliminate malaria by 2020. So last year was the first year of the 0 indigenous cases reported in China. So this is a big achievement. But what's the behind of the achievements is how to use the Chinese experience working in the other country.
And lastly, we end in France, where scattered vandalism marked May Day in France as hundreds of demonstrators marched across Paris to oppose economic policies pursued by President Emmanuel Macron. Some rioters smashed the windows of a McDonald's restaurant and set furniture inside on fire as the demonstrators in French capital heated up. The protesters wore masks and also threw firecrackers. During the march, workers and students waved anti-capitalist and brandished banners with phrases such as "risks to disrupting peace," "let's derail the government," and "Macron gives us a dark hatred." Organizers hope that the nationwide May Day protest will send a robust respite to the centralist Macron's plans to end some of the workers' protection. French Interior Minister Gerard Collomb posted a tweet condemning the vandalism and violence. And now, with the news story about the May Day protest in France, we come to the end of Global Watch. Remember, you can catch another episode of the program next week on Monday at the same time. My name is Eddy Nyadwa, and thanks for watching.